According to the computer. Okay, welcome. Happy Monday, everybody. We're going to continue with the laws of Havadallah. Not so much laws, actually. Yeah, there's laws. But I wanted to explain a few things that I always found to be interesting about Havadallah. Obviously, they're all sourced in Jewish law. I'll share a little bit of Kabbalah. It's kind of like the weekly roundup class. There's a little bit of Kabbalah, a little bit of halacha, a little law. But I know last week we spoke a little bit about Havadallah. Let's just continue on. And let's continue on. Okay, so for those of you that have the blue sitter, as I like to call it, this is the standard Chabad sitter. If you've ever been to Chabad house, you'll probably see something like this. I'm not sure in Portuguese what it looks like, although I've seen it. If you do Mariv, on page 131, so after we do the Mariv, if you do Mariv, the Aravit, the evening prayer, after Shabbos, you'll come into this little gray box over here. It's not a very little, it's actually a quite large gray box. It continues on to the next page. And it can be quite annoying, especially if you're just learning how to read. That's kind of it's kind of too much sometimes, a little bit too much to read. Don't worry, I've been there. I feel you. You don't have to say everything. And I'll explain what that is. I'll say it right now. It says in the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe brings down that the gates of Gehenim, yeah, you know that place that's very hot? It's not really hot. Actually, there's something even called Gehenim Shel Shelik. There's the purgatory of snow, which is even worse than the purgatory of heat. Some people love Las Vegas and they live there in the heat. They love that it's 114 degrees Fahrenheit. We have somebody here. He loves it. So Hashem said, okay, I'll give you a place of snow too. Make it hard for you. Obviously, purgatory is not really what purgatory is. We've explained that. Purgatory is not, you're not in a body, or we're not in a body, God forbid, and feeling pain. It's not that kind of pain. Anyway, it says the gates, the fires of Gehenim are closed for Shabbos, and they kick back up after Shabbos. But when? Is it right after Shabbos? Well, no, it's not. It doesn't take place until we conclude, until Mariv is like completely concluded. That's when it starts to kick off. Now, the question is, does that mean, is it for the person in Hawaii, like the furthest time zone? Is that once that person says his last Mariv or her last Mariv, that's when it kicks back up? It's unclear, but nevertheless, we know for sure it's after Mariv is concluded. So what do? We elongate Mariv. We spoke about, we elongate Mariv, the evening prayer after Shabbos, right in the beginning. A lot of places have the custom, especially in Sephardic circles. Now, why Sephardic circles? All these like cool things usually happen in the Sephardic circles. Why? Because they follow Kabbalah. They have a lot of Kabbalah, as does Chabad. But Sephardic and other Hasidic places, but Sephardic for sure. So whenever it talks about certain things in Kabbalah, they jump on it. So the Vehu Rachum, which is the opening line of Mariv, you have the blue sitter. It is starts on page 118. Vehu Rachum, Yechaper Avlein. They say it very long. They'll go like this. Vehu Rachum, Yechaper Avlein. They'll do it like very long because they're trying to that. Why do they do it so long? Because they don't want Shabbos to come out. They're trying to add to Shabbos. Elongate Shabbos, prolong Shabbos. So that's why they make it long in the beginning. At the end, however, we elongate Mariv. Even Shabbos is already concluded because we said Ata Chonentano, we made a declaration that Shabbos is over in the middle of the Amida prayer, which we spoke about last week. So that's it. Shabbos is over. Once you say, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, a separation between the holy and the mundane, it's over. Shabbos is over for you. You can turn on a light, no problem. But now at the end of prayer, we don't want Gehenim to open up, so we say this very long verses, a lot of verses of praise, and that's really what it is. And even Havdallah itself is made up of verses of praise. All you really have to do is just say, according to the Torah, if Havdallah is from the Torah, which we're not sure if it is or not, and that has ramifications. Really, all you got to do is say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu. All you have to do is make a Bari Priya Gafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Bari Priya Gafen, and just have it on some wine. That's the end of it. But we have all these verses of praise. He ne'el Yeshua siyaftach v'lo yevchad ki alzi. Yeah, we have this whole long thing. So we want to start the week off with praises. We want to killing 2 birds with 1 stone, or 3 birds with 1 stone. Elongate Gehenim. Start the week off with verses of praise. Taking Shabbos. Take Shabbos as long as we can. Experience Shabbos as long as we can. Now we don't say this on page, just to mention 131, we don't say it, this little gray box, if it's a week if there's going to be a holiday during the week. It just says it. Not exactly sure why. Alter Rebbe doesn't seem to bring it down in the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the people who compiled the Shulchan Aruch don't seem to bring it down. But certainly the connection is, an obvious connection is that the week is full of blessing. So it could be that the gates of Gehenna, the fires of Gehenna, so to speak, are not open, not in service. It's a week-long holiday. It's like the government. It's like the mail. Yeah, whatever. There's one holiday in the week, they take off the whole week. Let's see over here. Now, you should be careful if you're not going to say Havdalah at home. And you must make sure that you hear it in shul from the chazan. However, the chazan can only say Havdalah in shul if there's someone there that will not say it at home. In other words, he's relying upon the chazan at shul to say Havdalah. We do not repeat Havdalah. Once you are what's called Yotzi, you have fulfilled your obligation of Havdalah. You cannot repeat it. You cannot fulfill someone else's obligation. Unlike Kiddush on Shabbos, you can make 100 times. You can make it 100 times for anybody that needs to hear it. In fact, at shul, I make it at shul, and then I make it at home for my wife if she's not at home. And then if I go eat at my in-laws or something, I'll make it for them. It's a pretty fun Shabbos usually for me. Havdalah, however, is not the case. Now, the reason is, it's not super clear, but the reason Kiddush was set up by Chazal, by the rabbis, the Sanhedrin, the men of the Great Assembly, not the Sanhedrin, the men of the Great Assembly. They say you should make Kiddush on wine. It should be done on wine, and therefore we are obligated to make sure everyone fulfills their obligation to hear Kiddush. So you can do whatever you got to do. Plus, people didn't really have wine at home. Wine is very expensive, especially back then. It used to be very expensive. So therefore, we give everybody every opportunity possible. It wasn't uncommon for people not to have wine in their house. Sometimes in my house, we don't have wine. I have to go to my neighbor and say, give me a bottle of wine, especially on Pesach. I run out of wine very quickly. However, when it comes to Havdalah over wine was instituted later on, not by the rabbis, not by the sages. Havdalah over wine. You have to make a declaration that Shabbos is over, but you don't have to do it over wine. That's not from the Torah. It's not even rabbinic. It's from the Rishonim. So like the times of Rashi and the Rambam. That's when it became instituted. And so you can't just keep repeating God's name whenever you want, right? They don't have that kind of authority. So if you're going to say it, if you're going to hear it and be yotzi, fulfill your obligation, you cannot go ahead and make it for somebody else. Why? Where does that come up, by the way? Just very simply, if you go to like a big shul, any big synagogue, they're going to make Havdalah right away. You have to make sure, if you're going to go home and make for your, if you're a man, you're going to go home and make for your wife or for a parent or anything like that, you have to not listen. You have to say, I'm not fulfilling my obligation. I'm getting out of here. and they do it right away. They make Havdalah right away. I mean, you can stick around. You just have to say, I'm not fulfilling my obligation. It comes up. Let's see here.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
What about Kiddush? Because that's also using God's name.
Yeah, but it was set up.
You're
yeah,
still
exactly. But you're still. So how can you repeat God's name so many times? Is that your question? I shouldn't have cut you off. wait. So can you say your question in full?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, how are you allowed to say Hashem's name in one situation, but then in the other situation not so?
Yeah, so it has to do. It's a great question. So it has to do with who gave us that order to say Kiddush, and who gave us the order that we have to say Havdalah, meaning who said we have that obligation. So we know that the who gave us Kiddush, the Anshin Knesset HaGedolah, the men of the Great Assembly. We're talking about Ezra, Nehemiah, Zechariah, Malachi, Daniel, Mordechai. These are like, the people we hear about and we read about. So they have authority because they're doing it with prophecy. They're super, they're godly men, so to speak. They're doing it with divine inspiration, and they have authority that later generations don't have. So when they say it, there's a certain holiness. There's an added level of holiness when they make a decree, and we're very serious about that decree. We take that very seriously, right? It was an era, and then that era ended, and then you run into the era of the Mishnah, basically the Tanaim, and that's a different era. The Tanaim can't write, Haftorah books. They're not in Tanakh. They're not that level of authority. Then that era ended. We saw that the holy, the certain divine inspiration ended. So then you have the Talmud period, the Gemara period, the Amoraim, as we call them. That was a different period. And then that ended, and you have the Gaonim. Yeah, and it's called Yeridus Adoris. The generations are getting weaker and weaker, so to speak, spiritually, until we're here like us, that we don't see anything. So the Rishonim, which was after the Gaonim, so we're talking about 9th century, 7th century, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th century, they don't have the same kind of authority to say you can't say God's name whenever. They can't make a decree and then we're going to just use God's name all the time. They don't have that. They're not as divinely inspired. The holiness, there's like limitations to what they can do, as opposed to if anything was enacted before then, they have the authority. There's a certain level of divine inspiration that allows us to say God's name multiple times. It has to do with like a certain spiritual, level. What's the word I'm looking for? They're like
Madriga.
Yeah, madrega, but what's like a word in English? There's a quality level. There's a certain word I'm looking for.
Level, I think, is level.
Yeah, level just levels it. So because you can imagine now if we instituted a certain, now especially if somebody instituted, okay, we can't even institute blessings. That's how far we've come. Nobody has the authority now to even institute a blessing. You can't make up a blessing. So it's called Yeridus Hadoros. There are certain eras, and in that era they could, and later eras they couldn't.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Plus, saying Shabbos, saying Kiddush over wine could be Toradic. It's like it's not so clear. Most everybody holds that saying Kiddush Shabbos day over wine is from the rabbis, but it has the same weight and as almost Toradic. It's whatever. The Klal Yisrael, the general Jewish population over the generations, have concluded that whatever that level, anything the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah did, the men of the Great Assembly, it was done on the level of as if it was, from Moses himself or from God himself. Now, there were other things during that era, just to mention. There were other things that were enacted during that era that didn't make it into the canon of Torah, that didn't carry on because it was only for a certain period of time. But they let us know which should be carried on, which halachas, which laws, which mitzvahs should be carried on for the rest of the generations. This is something that should always happen. Like I said, there's millions and millions of prophets, right? We've always had prophets, millions, but only a few made it into the Tanakh or made it into the Torah. They're the ones that told us which. Getting a little. I just want to say something interesting. The word yotzi means to fulfill your obligation. That's he was yotzi. I was yotzi already. Yotzi. Yod tzadik aleph, which comes from the word. Really, what it really means is to come out, to leave, to exit, which means my obligation has exited. Yotzi. That's a very common word. Just like kosher. I like the word kosher. There's like certain buzzwords. Kosher. Kosher literally means, what is kosher? It's not blessed by a rabbi. Kosher just means prepared, ready. It's kosher. Yotzi. I just like these, like, three-letter words that have they don't exactly, we have different, we translate them differently than what they really are. Just decided to add that. Okay, so that was Ve'ata Kodesh V'Hinoyam. Just like we said, we add something to start the week off with brachas, extra blessings, to make sure the fires of Gehenna don't open up. Let's go on over here. Let's see. Something interesting. The Alter Rebbe brings down that you should light candles in your house after Shabbos. So we have a mitzvah. There's not a mitzvah, but there's a minhag, a custom that's almost halacha, but it's certainly a custom that we have what's called malava malka. Malava malka is the meal. Literally, malava malka literally means to escort the queen. Queen Shabbos, we're escorting her out, and we have a meal right after Shabbos. We wash with bread. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, on Shabbos would make hamotzi on matzah. He would use matzah all year. I also like to use matzah a lot. However, when it came to malava malka, the meal after Shabbos, the Rebbe would use bread. And it's explained in Kabbalah that the lose bone, there's a bone, or it's not really clear exactly, is it a bone or is it like a cell or a sinew or something? I don't exactly know. Nobody really fully knows, but there's like a bone in the back of your head. And it says that when Mashiach comes, there's going to be, during the revival of the dead, the soul will come in through the loose bone and the body will be regenerated from that bone. It's a bone that can never be destroyed, whether it's a bone or it's something smaller than that. It can never be destroyed, and that is where the body will be regenerated from. The sustenance, what gives the loose bone its strength, says Kabbalah, the bread that we eat at Malava Malka. Obviously, having a meal after Shabbos, which is always not so easy. Most of the time I'm not in the mood to have a meal after Shabbos, especially those who eat the third meal in the day, right? So we have a custom, we don't have a custom, it's a halacha, but it's not exactly, not everyone says it's a halacha, Chabad in particular, we're one of them, to have a meal between Mincha and Mariv. It's called Sudat Shlishit, or as we call it, Shalosh Shudas, the third meal. Now, can you imagine, I'm sure you do, for those of you that do it, you eat a meal at, let's say 8 o'clock p.m., Shabbos gets out at 10. I'm not exactly in the mood for another meal at 10 o'clock, especially cholent I had earlier in the day. I'm not exactly ready for a meal any rest of the day. But Chabad is very careful, makpid, stringent about trying to have the Ma'av Malka, and we have it because we want to strengthen the loose bone. It says that the Alter Rebbe brings down, it's not just the Alter Rebbe brings it down, but it's from Shulchan Aruch, it's from the Gemara, that after Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, Moitzi, what's Motzei Shabbos? Motzei, again, that word Yotzi, to come out. The exiting of Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, is an opportune time for Mashiach to arrive. Because the Gemara says Mashiach is not Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who's going to announce that Mashiach has arrived, will not come to announce it right before Shabbos. Why? Because it says that the women of the house are busy making bread and kugel, and they don't want to be for Shabbos, and they don't want to be disturbed. The Rebbe said, I guarantee you, if Elijah the prophet comes and says that Mashiach is here, the women will not complain about the kugel getting not finishing the kugel. So the Rebbe would say it's always an opportunity for Mashiach to come. But nevertheless, halacha says that Elijah won't come then, or the Talmud says that Elijah won't come right before Shabbos. He won't come on Shabbos either, because there's a problem of tchum. Remember, we spoke about tchum. Tchum is a boundary that you're not allowed to walk a certain distance, because it's kind of like not Shabbos anymore. If you can just like walk forever, we're trying to keep the atmosphere of Shabbos. Now it doesn't just mean like east and west. It also means like true north and south. Tchum, it says 10 tfachim. You can't go a certain height. You can't, so to speak, levitate over a certain height. It becomes not tchum. It's a problem of tchum. Boundary, literally boundaries. So it says Mashiach can't come. Mashiach can't ascend into the world because on Shabbos, because it's a problem of tchum. It's a boundary issue. He'll be coming in from outside the boundaries that you're allowed to go. The Rebbe said, don't worry. I'm sure Mashiach can figure out a way. But anyway, for those two reasons, after Shabbos, when everything is elevated and prepared and loving it and living it, the beauty of Shabbos, still getting off that high, so to speak, it's a very opportune time for Mashiach to arrive. That's why people have the custom to sing Eliyahu Navi, Eliyahu. Yeah, we sing songs about Mashiach, Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, because we're trying to invite him to come. I was bringing this up. Yeah, why? Oh,
Melava Malka.
Yeah, Melava Malka. So we actually have a custom of lighting candles by Melava Malka. We light candles as well by Melava Malka. Just like as if it's like a certain atmosphere of Shabbos. Not in many homes. I've been in a home, and I know it's not the only one, but it's the only time I think I've seen it, where they have 25-hour candles they light for Shabbos. 25-hour candles, which is super cool. The candles are lit the entire Shabbos, and then they light the Melava Malka candles from the Shabbos candles. So they like take in the holiness of Shabbos into the Melava Malka. Chassidim tell stories. You should try to tell a story at Melava Malka. It can be any sort of story that sets things off in the right foot. We know that Shabbos, it says in the Zohar that the week is blessed from Shabbos. The upcoming week is blessed on Shabbos. That's why we do certain things, which I'm not going to get into at this exact moment, but I'll tell you one thing. We do certain things to add blessing, to start the week off with blessing. Sephardim, especially I think Yemenite. I've been in a Yemenite shul on at the end of Shabbos. They laugh. They smell basamim. When they smell the basamim, the spices, they laugh. You can start off the week with joy and laughter. It's quite interesting. I've been in Moroccan shuls where they do a lot of bongos and congos after Shabbos. Super awesome. They have like a drum circle. And Chabad, and I'll just say something. The Gemara, the Halacha Shulchan Aruch brings down. We've mentioned this before, that we spill the wine when you fill the cup to say Havadallah. We spill it with wine, and we have that all the time. Anytime Chabad, especially, fills a cup of wine to say a blessing, we overflow. We overflow it. Why? So some say because of overflowing with blessings. That could be true, but in Shulchan Aruch, in Jewish law, it's brought down. It says when wine is spilled, a house where wine is spilled like water will have blessing. And it ties into another. The Taz brings down a different example, another reason, slightly different reason. He says, it says a house where wine is spilled and no one gets upset is a house of blessing. It brings blessing to the home. So we purposely spill over wine. Now, wine is something considered expensive, and we overflow it. In other words, we kind of have there's a certain loss. Yeah, you have a certain loss. And yet we don't get upset about a loss, a minor loss. And therefore it brings blessing. And it, just like the Taz also explains, just like we experience a minor loss in the beginning of Shabbos, the Taz says throughout the week you're going to have minor losses. It's just how life, this is how Hashem set it up, that in the week you're going to have a minor loss. But just how you reacted with the wine spilling and you were cool and it was like, you know what, this is also good. I like it. This is the way it's supposed to be. And you have a certain joy in knowing that. Same thing, any small loss that we have during the week should be accepted as like, hey, this is from Hashem. This is how it's supposed to be. I have joy in that. And now you know why we spill over the wine. And that's the specific reason why we spill over wine Motzei Shabbos. But now every time we spill, now you know why we spill wine every time, because we don't get upset. We do it. It brings extra blessing into the home. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, great. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Oh,
Rabbi.
okay. Yeah, Moshe, what's up?
Okay, I got two questions for you.
Sure.
Okay. Number one, I know that it's a custom to spill the wine, but I don't, because I use Rashi wine and it's sticky.
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
Well, when you spill it, you could spill it onto a plate. Like I do a Havadallah over a piece of aluminum foil. I have a plate.
Right.
I do it.
I also have the plate. I do have the plate. The kiddush.
It's still kind of a pain to clean. Yeah, I hear you. Whatever. If you want extra blessings, you know what to do. You know, it's not a problem. It's not brought down in. It's not halacha. It's just the custom. It is brought down in. It's brought down in halacha, but it is not halacha. I don't think anybody else really does it. Besides, I mean, I'm sure Sephardim do it.
What about the custom of dipping your pinkies?
Oh, I was gonna get to it. No, you have to stay till next week. Yeah,
okay.
Not dinking the pinkies, and why do we put it over our eyes, on our pockets?
Yeah.
We do it in other places. I was gonna bring it, but I didn't get to it.
Okay.
Cliffhanger.
Now I know that there's a custom, like when you light the Shabbat candles, the women light their Shabbat candles, that they also light separate candles for each child.
Yeah. Yes. Each member of the family. Yes.
Unless they're married, then you don't do it anymore.
If you're married, wait.
Well, if the child is married, then you don't.
No, they still do it.
Oh, they still do it.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't clear on that one.
Yeah, you come to the Rebbitzon's house, Rabbi Silverberg's wife. They have 10 kids. Or I mean, they got a lot of candles going on over there. A lot of candles. Whole place is like, well.
Sounds good.
You don't want to be sitting at the Shabbos table near the candles. Trust me. Yeah. Yeah, but we'll get into next week. And then why don't we blow out the candle? We'll get into that next week, God willing. We don't blow out the candle. You guys know that? And candles,
yeah,
we don't blow
them out. Dip it in wine.
Yeah, why do we dip it in wine? We'll get into that next week. Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, then I'm going to leave you. Nadia, good to see you.
Rabbi, shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. It's good to see everybody tonight. There's Rambam, which is good. There's Rambam. Tomorrow, Tanya Tuesdays. We got a lot of Tanya going on Tuesdays, by the way. We got a lot of Tanya going on during the week. I don't even post everything. You guys know that? I don't even post everything. It's like too much. Onto the WhatsApp is what I'm saying. And I will give my weekly roundup next week. I mean, not next week, tomorrow night. God willing. All right. With that, I wish you guys a good rest of the day. Catch up with you later.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, man.
Go ahead.
Peace.